Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard now our distinguished panelists. The floor is now open for questions, comments to the panelists. My only request is please be brief so that we can handle as many questions as we can. One of the problems here is the light is so bright, I can't see even who wants to ask any questions. Okay, I think, is that Dominic? Yes, it looks like you. Okay. Is there a mic? Can you take it to?
Thank you very much, Ajit. As usual, you managed to share a very interesting session. Your presence is key to the success. I want to continue to be provocative with Bill, Dr. Egbe. As a corporate man, he will be provocative. Well, first of all, let me tell you that I'm from the International Association for Water Resources Law, which is better known under its Spanish acronym AIDA. And we all agree that the true price of water is a key element for the future. But I would like to make, and it's very courageous of Dr. Egbe to promote the true price of water, because that's the only way we can make sure that never the glass of Coca-Cola will become cheaper than the glass of tap water. So my point is that we have to make sure that in the future we'll have major corporations will abide by a code of conduct whereby they do not use their bargaining power, which is immense when they establish a factory, creating jobs, investing in a country, that they don't insist on a subsidized price of water to make their operation. Thank you so much.
Who would like to answer that? Bill, you raised the issue of water pricing first. Would you like to have a crack at it?
Yeah, I guess it was more of a statement than a question posed, but there is no question that for companies like ours that depend enormously on access to water, the huge focus that we have internally on being sure that we can use that water as efficiently as possible has always been there. It is a question that's fundamental to the survival and the success of the business. We also understand that as we drive for optimal efficiency within our plants, we need to make sure that what we output in from the plants in terms of wastewater, we treat that to a level that can be put back into nature and into the community and be integrated into the water systems. Those are commitments that have always been there within our company, and they're an integral part of how we as operating managers are being measured every day. It makes sure that you're very focused on those deliverables and those commitments, and I think that's fundamental. And the things that we need to do outside the factory to ensure that we're able to partner with the community to ensure that there is a sustainable use of water outside the factory also, that we partner with them around protecting watersheds. We deal with reforestation issues around the communities in which we do business to ensure that we can deal with issues around rainwater harvesting, help share the technology and know-how with the communities so they can leverage those also to their benefit as we do within our plants. I think all of those elements are very fundamental to ensure that you have a sustainable business, because we're there to do business for the long term, and we know we cannot survive and succeed in the long term if the communities in which we do business are not thriving. If they're having problems with water access, we're not going to survive. We know the impact of building plants in areas that run out of water and the devastating effect that has, not just in the community, but on our business investments. So I think that consciousness makes sure that it makes us be very focused on partnering with the right people, aligning to what the government is trying to achieve in those areas, and make sure that we deliver against the commitments that we make on a sustained basis.
Gretchen, you made the interesting point that the American public is willing to pay for the water. Why don't the politicians listen to the public? They're supposed to listen to it, to the public.
Well, that's a challenge. I mean, clearly, you take a survey, we've got input that the Americans would pay more, especially to assure themselves they've got a good water quality source. I think it's difficult. Politicians are driven by different demands. They want to be reelected, they have their challenges, and there's also a lot of people that have difficulties paying, and you want to address that. Water is important to everyone's health, so you've got to assure that. But there are ways to be able to address the poor and still actually drive the right answers in terms of the value of water for other resources. But it also comes back to being able to implement a smarter infrastructure. Today, we don't have an infrastructure around water that really can measure and give you the data you need to be able to appropriately price the way we would like to. So there is technology that we can incorporate that can give us that information and measure, and then helps you drive that accountability to be able to go take the actions that are required. And you're seeing that happen in industry. Not across the board. Industry still needs to stand up and do their parts. But we also need the government to take their part, to take the tough stance to say, this is a precious resource. We've got to value it.
Let's take a few more comments or questions. There's a gentleman. Please go ahead. Would you identify yourself?
Good morning, thank you. I've been working for 20 years in a superb multinational company, and then I started my own business in water and in access to potable water in emergency situation and in rural area. I found out that there are a couple of easy solutions around in different places which have been found by either social companies or people on the ground, and they are feeling the same difficulty that you're feeling in big corporations. It is to scale up. And I think that there are easy solutions, like putting a tube well in a village is known for not being a solution because the tube well is born to be broken one day. It is sure. There are no tube wells which do not break. So tube well has to be with maintenance and with education, and the whole thing has to be together. And when you've been working for a couple of years in water, those are basics, and then you don't need to be taught about that. But those basics are not utilized or not necessarily scaled up. My point is there a possibility that some of the top players, like you have Nestle, Coca-Cola, you have Veolia, join forces in building up an incubator for innovative solutions, grassroots, simple solutions, to scale them up, one in a way, like only here we have around more than 500 factories. Around the 500 factories, you will have thousands of villages. There are some good ideas, simple, down to earth. And the multinational companies, they have the skill, they have the intelligence, they have the ability to articulate everything in economic terms, and they don't necessarily have le jeu de chambre of some of the NGOs. If they would leverage their intelligence with the NGO intelligence, and with some of the big corporations like UN Corporation Intelligence, though sometimes they are too intelligent, I felt. So if all those could join forces and leverage the skills of the multinational companies, who are the leaders? I am sure that some simple, pragmatic solution would scale up. And if not, then that would kill the solution, but at least that would not be a solution, and then we would be looking for the next solution. Thank you, sorry for having been so long.
Would you like to answer that?
Yes, certainly. And there are two aspects to this. The first one, as you mentioned, the immediate action near where our operations are. And indeed, about half of our factories are located in remote rural areas. And I can confirm to you that, of course, we engage in that sense with providing the communities around our operations with access to water in many ways, not only as we do in some cases by actually creating an infrastructure near the schools. One of the things that we find very important is the education around our operations, of course, is facilitated so that later on we have access also to resources that will altogether further into the process that we call the shared value creation. In other words, we have to find ways to impact the communities around our operations favorably. And it's all good, and we are operating also with and through NGOs, and we understand and agree, I fully agree with you, the agility of NGOs in approaching also the authorities is something that we use in a large number of community projects and so on. We have just issued this year water report that will be spread around, and I think we have some even in the hall here, where we explain all these things in very detailed manner and so on. But it is important that, and that's where we think we have a bigger impact, that we actually drive good agricultural practices when it comes to the utilization of water and also the preservation and treatment of wastewater coming out of the agricultural activities. We have about 1,000 agronomists around the world whose job, they're paid by NESE, whose job is to meet the farmers, to meet the people involved in agricultural practices, to teach them about how we can better utilize water, how we can increase the yield, how we can use certain species that are also drought resistant, how to impact their productivity by irrigation techniques and so on and so forth. And there we can make a much bigger impact when it comes to the accounting of things. And, you know, I spoke earlier about the importance of measuring things. It is also making the relative weight of the impact of every one of those solutions. For us, and you're absolutely right, first of all, alone we cannot do anything. We have to not only partner with, of course, the authorities and so on, but also with civil society and with NGOs, and take advantage of your agility and your ability to engage with the communities. But let's measure things as they are, and let's impact as much as we can. If not, all this progress will become negligible in terms of, are we really giving an answer to the challenges of the future? So, you know, I can only invite you to meet me later on and make sure that if you have any way that we can connect together, we can do so.
Mr. Ferrer, would you like to add something?
Yes. Il faut savoir, monsieur, que les collaborations entre les entreprises et les ONG sont déjà très nombreuses dans le domaine de l'eau et ont permis de faire beaucoup de progrès. Certaines sont bien connues. Je pense à la collaboration entre Veolia et la Grameen Bank, ou entre Danone, qui est un confrère de M. Lopez, et la même Grameen Bank, pour trouver des solutions aux problèmes de l'eau pour les populations les plus pauvres. Et en Afrique, les collaborations entre les entreprises et les ONG sont très courantes et beaucoup plus nombreuses que celles de ces organisations non gouvernementales qui ne veulent pas collaborer avec les entreprises. Dans le forum, je ne sais pas si vous l'avez vu, mais je vous incite à le voir, le stand qui reproduit un bidonville et qui présente une quinzaine de solutions d'accès à l'eau et à l'assainissement qui ont été conçues par, la plupart du temps, l'association de compétences entre des professionnels et des ONG en est un bon exemple. Mais une fois cela dit, pour résoudre des problèmes de masse comme celui de la crise de la demande en eau, ou bien de l'accès à l'eau et à l'assainissement, pour résoudre ces problèmes de masse compliqués, nous ne trouverons pas toujours des solutions simples. Et ces problèmes de vie collective en milieu dense, impliquant des populations nombreuses, nécessiteront des solutions qui ne sont pas toujours simples. Pas toujours simples techniquement, pas toujours simples financièrement, pas toujours simple institutionnellement. Un exemple parmi mille, le problème de l'accès à l'eau dans les bidonvilles aujourd'hui se heurte bien davantage à des problèmes de droit de propriété que des problèmes de savoir-faire technologique. Ces questions ne sont pas simples et leurs solutions ne pourront vraisemblablement pas toujours être simples. Mais la bonne volonté et l'association de compétences, et pas seulement entre entreprises ou entre entreprises et NGOs, mais avec l'ensemble des acteurs, et notamment les acteurs politiques, cette association-là est certainement une nécessité pour esquisser des solutions, même complexes.
Yeah. Any more questions, comments? This gentleman there at the back.
Good morning. My name is Moti from Iran. I would like to give an example about the water price in Iran. This year, the government of Iran has decided, after a long study, to increase the price of all sorts of energy. For example, gas, electricity, as well as water. Because just saying to the people for reducing the water consumption, it didn't work. And as a solution, the government has decided to increase the water price from this year. But as Dr. Cox said, actually there are two big problems. One is what is the real price of the water, and another is the challenge between the poor people and the government that they don't accept to increase the water price because they think the price of water is nothing and they have to consume water free. This is actually an example of this solution which Dr. Cox mentioned in his speech. Thank you.
I think that's more of a comment rather than a question. There's a question here or comment here, okay, in the front. In the front here. Here. Or, okay, let's go there and then you come, okay.
Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, c'est Amadou Mariko, le premier vice-président du Parlement mondial de la jeunesse pour l'eau. En fait, en tant que jeune et ayant un peu d'expérience et de connaissances dans le domaine de l'eau, j'aimerais poser une toute petite question à M. Anthony de l'OCDE. Concernant l'accès des populations à l'eau potable et à l'assainissement, j'aimerais savoir d'ici 2025 quels sont plutôt les éléments qui se posent comme un réel problème pour l'accès des populations à l'eau potable et à l'assainissement. Si c'est la croissance démographique ou bien si c'est la pollution.
Anthony, would you like to have a go?
I think that the projections that we have for out to 2050 indicate that the world population is going to grow from around 7 billion this year, around now, to 9 billion. So population growth is a serious driver of water demand. In addition to that, economic growth, rapid urbanisation, and the changing economic structure, particularly of emerging and transition economies. As they move more into the middle class, their consumption patterns will change, their demand patterns will change for things like electricity, their dietary patterns are likely to change. So we're going to see the drivers there are really strong. These will have an impact on the pollution that is generated as we have more rapid urbanisation. So it's, in terms of the hierarchy, I wouldn't say that one is more important than the other. They're commingled.
And also it will depend on the context.
Sorry?
It will also depend on the context.
Indeed,
Yes.
indeed. So the most of the increasing wastewater, the increasing nutrient effluent from wastewater is going to be happening in the emerging and developing economies, precisely because of the rapid shift to cities. But that doesn't say the OECD countries are off the hook. It's there are increasing pressures being placed on countries within Europe, for example, under the EU Water Framework Directive, to increase the water quality standards. And that has a significant investment cost, which countries are, it's a real challenge to meet.
Mr. Ferro, you want to say something?
Oui, je voudrais juste rajouter un point. Plus encore, monsieur, que l'accroissement de la population mondiale ou que la pollution, le facteur déterminant pour assurer l'accès à l'eau, ça sera le problème de la densité et de la concentration de cette population, certes croissante, mais sa concentration très forte dans des petits endroits qu'on appelle les villes. Il y aura 9 milliards d'habitants sur la Terre, effectivement, à cette époque-là, mais 70 à 75% de ces habitants habiteront en ville, pour 50% aujourd'hui. Et c'est bien le problème de la non-extension des ressources locales aux droits des villes qui sera certainement le défi le plus complexe à résoudre face à ce phénomène d'urbanisation galopante.
Okay, any more? Okay. Dr. Sitaram? Okay, please go ahead.
Oui, merci. Merci pour les différentes communications qui sont très brillantes. Et néanmoins, il y a un certain aspect que je n'ai pas entendu aujourd'hui et je pense qu'on ne peut pas l'oublier, et notamment quand on parle de l'avenir des ressources en eau à l'horizon 2025. C'est l'impact des changements climatiques. Certes, il y a beaucoup de propos où on peut intégrer l'impact, mais ma question, est-ce qu'il y a des particularités, est-ce qu'il y a, en plus de ce qu'on a dit, des choses qu'il faut en prendre compte, des choses qu'il faut, disons, particulièrement prendre en considération pour minimiser cet impact qui, certainement, on a parlé de 9 milliards, on a parlé des changements de vie, mais quand même, il faut parler de la diminution de la disponibilité, et même si pas la disponibilité au niveau global, mais il va y avoir quand même un changement de la disponibilité à la fois dans le temps et dans l'espace. Merci.
Thank you very much. Let's take one or two more questions and then, because we're running out of time. Is there a microphone here? Can you?
I congratulate Professor Biswas for organizing this very important panel and thank the panelists for some excellent inputs and comments. One question which I like to ask, which I see is very relevant when we talk of future of water, which is 15 years from now and later, is that many of us in the room will not be able to implement those solutions because we need younger people who are in their 30s and 40s who will go and implement these solutions. Why I say that is many universities today do not produce experts from the business schools and the graduate schools go to work in water. They might go to work in banks or IT companies and so on. And our research in the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy has shown that much of the water will continue to be delivered by the public sector for many more years to come. That's a reality today. Having said that, we will need, that means, leaders, and we have also found from evidence like the Exxon Chan in Asia and so on, who I know very well, those leaders make the great change that we need to see in the water sector to deliver the drinking water or the change policies and make institutions. So in that regard, what is your view? Because I don't see the corporate themselves making the change as much as the leaders will change in the near future. What is your view to work with universities and to create that appetite and to create that market for employing those potential leaders in your corporate who can then make the change. Thank you.
Joseph?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think actually the two questions are very much tied together. One says that, well, we hear all these pieces of data, scenarios, and we try to see how we play one with the other, and we all immediately think this is all very complex. And then when we talk about urbanization, the number of people living in cities going to 70%, the biggest problem to these people is that food needs to get to them. And that means that you will have, and again, food is the main user of water. You know, the whole concept of virtual water, 9,000 liters for 1 kilo of beef. All this water that needs to be put into the food chain that then needs to come to the cities with all the waste and all the transformation energy and so on and so forth, all of that will have to accompany the urbanization process. And yes, where are the leaders and how do we make sure that they come up to understanding this huge complexity and also have the willingness to engage in activities that are not immediately linked to the gain. Let me just mention that I happen to be part of the University of Cambridge leadership program for sustainability, and the area that we focus the most on is what leader for the planet in 2025, in 2050. And it is clear that there are notions that need to be incorporated in the thinking of leader, and there is a new motive in the youth in coming to work. And I can assure you that as the head of operation, I receive a lot of requests for employment and so on. There is out there today a youth that is conscious that they are going to have to tackle those challenges. There is, in a number of institutions, a new drive to not only build technical skills, but also leadership skills, understanding of complex environments, and willingness to engage in another dynamic than the dynamics that I went through as I grew up as a young engineer and joined an essay company and so on and so forth. I am 100% with you. I'm very passionate about this, actually, because if we do not change, if we do not bring other measurements, we have talked about natural capital. How do you measure GDP? Today is in measuring your ability to destroy the environment. How do we measure GDP in the future will have to be sorted out, found, and institutionalized by the youth that is going through university today, and so on and so forth. And I can assure you again that as a company, we welcome those people, we hire people that have, in addition to a willingness to progress their careers, a sense of ethics, of values, and we say it very often, the only way that we know will allow us to achieve sustainability as a company that has been around for 150 years is to be a principle-based company in which those type of leaders will find a way to progress and to prosper and to bring us forward.
Mr. Chiu, would you like to add something?
Just let me add that leadership is key in making sure that we can have a sustainable supply of water for the world. The challenges are extremely complex, extremely wicked, and the key issue is that I think in every city, every country, there needs to be very clear foresight from the leadership perspective in terms of what is the water infrastructure you want to put in place to ensure that water supply will continue to be sustainable well into the future. And it's leadership that has enabled places like Singapore to put in place very clear thinking in terms of how is it that we are supposed to position to ensure that there will be adequate supply of water, how is it that we can actually right price water, how is it that we can actually put together an integrated systems approach to managing water. And they all start very clearly because there is clear leadership, there's clear political will that actually provides enabling conditions for this to develop. And I think there's no shortcut. I think there's no the magic answer to this. We must continue to groom the leadership right away. Continue to make sure that we can have people who understands the issues, the complexities, and the willingness and the gumption to come forward and actually take charge of the water challenges that is faced by cities and countries all over the world. Yeah.
Gretchen?
Yeah, I'd just like to add just a couple comments here. You know, I think part of getting the right leaders and getting the talent that's out there interested in the water is up to us to paint the opportunities. I mean, we talk a lot about the issues of water and the barriers and why we can't solve the issues. And you've got the young coming out that want to be able to break down the barriers. They don't want to be stopped. They want to be able to be quick and adaptive in terms of opportunities. And we've got to kind of monetize our water industry. You know, they're used to doing social media. They're used to connecting to anyone at any level. And given the fragmentation of our water industry, we need to help encourage that, because that's going to break down the barriers and enable some of the solutions that we're looking for. But getting young talent is absolutely essential. Those who really want to actually see a very good positive economic value, but also see that very nice social value so that they can do well and do good to solve water. And that's what we need to be telling them, is the opportunity that's out there.
Mr. Ferro, briefly.
Oui. À défaut de vous dire, monsieur, qui ils seront ces leaders, moi j'ai une idée de où on pourra au moins les trouver. On les trouvera dans des organisations qui leur permettront de connaître une large gamme de problèmes et de solutions, dans des organisations ouvertes sur le monde, qui leur permettront de pouvoir rapprocher et raisonner par analogie et rapprocher des problèmes entre eux, des solutions entre elles, des organisations qui leur permettront de connaître une manière de